office of President of the United States.
For democracy belongs to us all.
A government for our tomorrows.
Where I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
We gather because we have chosen hope over fear.
Because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you.
Meet this moment as the United States of America.
Hello. Welcome to the Washington Post Live. My name is Amy Gardner. I cover voting for the national desk at the Washington Post. Today, we're joined by Georgia Secretary Brad Raffensperger, Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. Mr. Secretary, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started. I want to start out by talking about the incredible importance of Georgia in a presidential election. 4 years ago, the election in Georgia was decided by a number of votes that you and I will not soon forget, I suspect, 11,779 votes. In other words, in a state of 8.2 million registered voters that carries 16 electoral votes, just a few thousand could decide the outcome. I wonder if you could talk about what you're most focused on heading into this year's election, please.
Good morning, Amy. Actually, we've been focused on this since day one, is to shore up any voters' concerns and help rebuild trust where we felt it needed to be rebuilt. Number one, no matter how you vote in Georgia, we now have photo ID for all forms of voting. So if you vote absentee, photo ID, in person early, and also obviously on election day. We think that shores up voters' trust in the process. We've also done some things to really get those results reported quickly. So all the early absentees that have been accepted and all the early voting have to be reported no later than 8 p.m. on election night. We think that's really important. We think that helps build trust. We will be starting early voting tomorrow. In spite of Hurricane Helene coming through here, devastating about 40 of our counties and damaging several others, the counties are ready to go. All 159 counties are starting early voting on tomorrow.
As you said, early voting starts tomorrow across the state of Georgia. What can voters expect, and what would you like them to know about the start of early voting on October 16th?
Well, by and large, all the counties are in great shape, but if you're living in one of the counties that was hit, we're going to have to move a few precincts, early voting precincts, and also probably election day. We've been working very closely with Governor Kemp and his team at GEMA, the Georgia Emergency Management Agency, since the day after the hurricane hit, making sure that we're going to have power and internet and everything we need to have secure facilities. So by and large, you can go to my voter page and that'll tell you where you vote on election day, and your counties will post that on social media if a few precincts. It's less than a handful out of 2,400, but we want voters to be aware of that.
And what kind of turnout are you expecting, both early voting, mail balloting, and election day voting? Can you give us a sense of what you're expecting and how well the counties are prepared for that?
We don't like making predictions, but from what we've seen so far, last week we had about 250,000 people that had requested an absentee ballot. And as an aside, the United States Postal Service did step up its game, and those absentee ballots had been requested and accepted. Those ballots went out to voters last week. But 250,000, we may have another 50, so 300,000, I would say 5 million voters. That's about 6%. So that's really about what we're going to see for absentee voting, we believe. And then probably 60% will be voting early. And then the balance of the other 30%, maybe 35% vote on election day.
And is that number 6%? I'm certain it's lower than 2020 during the pandemic, of course, but is that higher than pre-pandemic absentee voting levels in Georgia?
It's really just about the same. If you look at, we had about 5-6% in 2022. We had about 5% back in 2018, 2016, and prior years. So it looks like Georgians have just gone back to their preferred way of voting, which is actually, on the 17 days of early voting that we have.
Let's talk a little bit about the state election board. Of course, you are sort of the top election official in the state of Georgia and give a lot of guidance to the counties who are actually running the elections on the ground across the state. But as you know, the state election board has been passing some new rules in recent weeks, including one requiring a hand count of the number of ballots in the days immediately after the election. What do you think the impact of those rules are, and what is your view of the purpose of those rules?
Well, first of all, that rule about the hand counting is before the judge, and that he'll hear that later this week. That will be decided. They've gotten pushback from both sides of the aisle. A hard right think tank has pushed back on constitutional issues. They've gotten from the left side, but also two county boards, Muskogee County and also Columbia County, have sued. They don't believe they think it exceeds state law, but they're also concerned about what it'll do to really the election management. First of all, there's chain of custody concerns. You have these people breaking open the boxes and then starting to, you know, count the ballots. You don't know who's actually touching that. There's supposed to be a chain of custody, and we have that in place. But also, then just to do the hand count for larger precincts is going to take a lot more time. Everything we've been fighting for since 2020 has been give the voter quicker, responses, quicker results. And that's why we're going to post all the early votes by 8 p.m. Well, this now drags on for the final 30% till 1, 2, 3, or 4 o'clock in the morning. Really, that just becomes a breeding ground for conspiracy theories. And so we don't support it, but the judge will make that determination. We'll find out. We'll follow the law.
Do you think that the state election board overstepped its authority with these rules?
I've been pretty clear that I think they exceed state law. So is our general counsel. She wrote them a detailed 2-page memo, and they have it.
Got it. Thank you. I wrote a story last week about how a group of Republican members of Congress sued in Pennsylvania to force state officials to segregate overseas and military ballots, which they say are not sufficiently secure. The process is too porous. They say in Pennsylvania they don't require the same identification requirements that are required of in-person early voting and domestic mail balloting. Do you have some thoughts about the impact of that suit and of the rhetoric questioning the security of military and overseas ballots? And have you heard much about that issue in your state?
Well, what I will say is that I support our military and support their commitment to give up their life if that's what happens to in a time of war or any kind of military conflict. So we want to make sure that we get our overseas ballots out to them, and we've done that. But no matter how you vote, we, in effect, are using driver's license number or some form of, photo ID based process so we can tie that back to the voter to give voters trust in that. So we have that in place, and we've not heard any issues about that here in Georgia. I would just encourage every state that doesn't use photo ID for all forms of voting. Look how we do it. Look at some of the other states like Minnesota, Nebraska, Kansas, and Texas. Now we're all using photo ID. We think that shores up voters' trust, voters' confidence in the process.
Of course, you were a party to that famous phone call on January 2nd, 2021, in which then President Trump asked you to find 11,779 votes when it looked like he had lost the race in your state to Joe Biden. And in fact, the race had been certified at that point. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you're combating misinformation and, as you put it a minute ago, conspiracy theories, and how much harder is it? Is it harder because some of those theories are actually coming from the top of the presidential ticket? For instance, Trump's running mate J.D. Vance has refused to say, given multiple opportunities by the press, that Trump lost the 2020 election. I wonder if you could talk about what it's like to combat that kind of misinformation coming from the top of the ticket.
Well, we want voters to have high trust, high confidence. So if you look at everything that we've done, since 2020, and even going back, to 2019 when I took office, we have a verifiable paper ballot. But this year, what we're going to do is the first time in America ever, we're going to be able to audit every single race that has been cast. So we have the ballot images after all those 5 million ballots are cast, absentee, early, or election day. We'll have those images, and we're going to be able to run those through a scanner with a tech company and read the human readable text of every single race, not just the president. We'll take that all the way down to the county surveyor, county librarian, and we'll be able to compare that to what you got with the machine totals. So that's one way that we're going to retally that and give you a 100% risk limit to help us, encourage and build trust with voters. We think that's really important. I think reporting those results real quick is another thing, having photo ID for all forms of voting. So everything we've done is to make sure that we can improve the accuracy and also then have, belts and suspenders. So no matter what people say, we're actually going to say we've already checked that. We also have the cleanest voter list in the entire country. We have the cleanest list, and we recognize that for several reasons. One is we're part of a 25 state, multi-state organization. Our office here will exchange our voter list with 25 other states. It's a confidential, secure way of doing that. So we can make sure that we don't have people on two different voter lists. Now with our Department of Driver Services, all 49 other states plus the District of Columbia, all of them, we get their driver's license. If you say move from Georgia to whatever state that is, Massachusetts, or it could be, Washington State, we find out about that, and then we can reach out to the voter to take them off the list because they have a driver's license in another state because they've moved there. Get death records monthly, and then we also have bilaterals with 4 states that pulled out of that multi-state organization. So everything we've done is to have clean and accurate voter lists because people always said there's dead people voting. No, there aren't. I'm the first Secretary of State over 20 months ago to do an audit of the voter rolls to make sure only American citizens were on the voter list. And because we do a robust citizenship verification, we came back and we found 1,600 people who attempted to register but never got on the voter list because our system was secure, our system checked that, and they couldn't prove citizenship. So we feel like we've got a lot of things in place. So people can say things, but at the end of the day, the winner will be the winner. And the other person will be the person that comes up short. And we'll try and be as gentle as we share that because we understand how polarized it is on both sides of the aisle.
But notwithstanding all of those steps that your office has been taking, that has not stopped groups and individuals from filing lawsuits claiming that the voter rolls in Georgia and elsewhere, of course, are still bloated or, still do include people who are not eligible to vote or either non-citizen or moved away. What are you doing specifically, if anything, to sort of counter message when you talk to individuals who disagree with you? Do you feel like you make progress with them? Do you give them the same explanation that you just gave our viewers? And is it effective? And can you just talk a little bit more expansively about what your office has in place in terms of like a messaging counterpoint or a rapid response operation to deal with the misinformation that is so prevalent out there right now?
Well, our office itself, we do the best we can with our press releases, but we understand on a good day we may have 50,000, Twitter followers, and other people have millions upon millions. So obviously, may probably be some outside organizations that can weigh in there and really try to correct all that disinformation and be very out there on social media to get that out there immediately. But our job is to do our job, and our job is to respond to people. When we get sued, we meet them and we beat them in court. Because at the end of the day, you have to have the numbers, and we have the numbers, we have the facts on our side.
Well, when you mention someone who has many millions more followers than you do, one person's name comes to mind for me at least, and that's Elon Musk, of course. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you think the impact is of some of the information is probably not the right word, but false claims that he's been putting out there on Twitter, on X, his company formerly known as Twitter. And have you come out and attempted to refute his statements in particular, and what impact do you think his misinformation has had on voters in Georgia specifically?
Well, I think that when people have any questions, and particularly if someone, with his really number of Twitter followers, his influence, he could call me whenever he wants. In fact, he can get my personal cell number. You can give it to him, or other people have it. I won't put it out here today because I can only handle so many calls a day. But I actually would love to talk to people like him that are influencers and give them the facts about what we're doing in Georgia, so they understand this will be safe, secure, and we will get those results posted quickly. And I think that we just are the role model. We have high marks from the Heritage Foundation and also, the Bipartisan Policy Center. We're ranked at the very top of the list for those two organizations. So when we have that, you have to understand that in Georgia we have secure, accurate elections. At the end of the day, I love to talk to influential people, give them the facts. If they want to come tour of our office, I'm more than happy to sit down with them. I think that's really important. In fact, I wish after we passed SB 202 that some of the major corporations, located here in Georgia, would have called us before they started saying, we think that Stacey Abrams was right about this, because she was so wrong about everything she said about SB 202. Photo ID had been used in Minnesota for over 10 years. Now we're using photo ID for absentee voting, just like they have been. Nebraska and Kansas have been using it for a long period of time. So it's a Midwestern thing, but it makes sense. You're taking away just subjective signature match where we had been sued by both political parties, Republicans and Democrats. As an engineer, I'm looking at a fact-based system, and that's what we've been working hard every day because I know that every vote matters because every voter matters. And I want them to know that their vote counts.
Do you expect Donald Trump to contest the result in Georgia if he loses to Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris? And are you prepared for it? And can you tell us a little bit about how you're prepared for it, if so, please?
Well, obviously, this is not our first rodeo. Stacey Abrams lost by 55,000 votes in following 2018. I get signed into office, and we have about 10 or so lawsuits from that. We pushed back with the facts. Then 2020, we got it from my side. And so we pushed back with the facts. And so if people have questions at the end of the day, we're going to be able to respond with a fact base, but also we're going to have all 5 million paper ballots. And we're going to be able to scan those and read the human readable text. We can do that by hand, or we can do that with, this tech company that we've partnered with, and we'll be able to do that scan. You'll be able to check it, and so you'll be able to actually look at it. Oh, and that paper ballot that we have has security fibers, and we've also now put the state seal on it, so you'll know it's official, ballot paper. It's not something that you got from a local office supply store. And so all those things that we've done are to build trust for voters.
I'm working on a story this week with my colleague Tyler Pager, who covers the White House and the Harris campaign, about how the Harris campaign is prepared to protect the vote against efforts to undermine or thwart a popular result. They say they have a robust election protection operation, as most campaigns do. But they also are telling us that they're actually not worried. They talk, everyone is sort of on message talking about how the 2020 election was the safest and most secure election in US history, and that they have no reason to believe that 2024 will be any different. And I wonder if you could reflect on whether you agree with that outlook, and if you're prepared in different ways to combat sort of emergency scenarios in your state if there is a large scale objection to the result.
We're going to be prepared. Obviously, 2020, in the middle of a pandemic, it came off as it relates to election management, and it came off well. We had short lines on election day back in 2020. We've been working on that again, so we'll keep those lines short, less than 1 hour. And so that we think the voter will have a good experience. But we understand at the end of the day, when all those results get, put up on the board and everyone can look at the total, that half the people are going to be, dancing in the street, and the other half are going to be very disappointed. But we want voters to have confidence in that. And that's why we have all the, things that we put in place that I've mentioned about today. We've checked citizenship, have clean voter list. We make sure we have photo ID for all forms of voting. We get those results posted quick, keep lines shorter. Everything we've done is to really build trust. At the end of the day, we also now have political parties can have observers there. They go through the poll worker training so they can watch the process and they can actually understand what they're watching. We think that's really important. So we'll be ready, and we welcome, that scrutiny. We intend to have a very open and transparent process because at the end of the day, I work for the voters, and I want every voter to know that their vote counted. It was counted accurately, and hear what the results are.
I want to try it one more time. Do you think that the Harris campaign is being too rosy about the possibility for disruptions?
Well, I believe in the very best of my fellow Georgians. And so I know that at the end of the day, they will accept the results. What people do that come from, out of our state and try and cause disruptions, we've seen it before, and we'll be prepared. But when we meet them in court, we win because we deal with the facts. And I know that for half the people, it's going to be very disappointing. And I understand that. And we don't know which way this election will go. But our job every day is to make sure we have fair, honest, and accurate elections. And that's what we've been working on. In spite of a pandemic, we're going to be ready tomorrow. We've got a great team in the state elections office. We also have great county election directors too.
One of the moments 4 years ago that was troublesome, I suppose is a good word for it, was the meeting of the electors on December 17th, 2020, when the electors who had been picked by the Trump campaign met in the Georgia State Capitol in Atlanta, in spite of the fact that Biden had been the certified winner, and Biden's electors, I think, if I'm not mistaken, chaired by Stacey Abrams, were meeting in the House chamber to cast their electoral votes for Joe Biden. Are there specific preparations that are underway for the meeting of the electors this year at the Georgia State Capitol? Are you worried about security or alternate electors as they were known in 2020? And are you doing anything specifically about the meeting of the Electoral College this year?
No, that's not really in our lane. Our lane is to go ahead and report all the results, eventually get it to the point where we can certify it. That'll include, before we certify, post-election audits to verify the results. Like I said, we're going to have the audit of all 5 million ballots of every single race scanned and tabulated. Anyone that comes within 0.5% can ask for a recount. So we'll recount any of those races within 0.5%. So there'll be up to 3, counts on those ballots. So everyone will know, who won those races based on those results. What they do with the electors, I think they probably realized that wasn't a good strategy, but that's a different, part of the process. My process is to certify it, and I send it over to the governor's office. He'll review it, and then he'll be in that position that he can certify the results, and that's when they'll have the election of the electors here for Georgia.
As you know, hundreds of election administrators around the country have retired or quit since 2020, in part because of the absolute spike in threats and harassment that they've endured since Donald Trump began contesting the 2020 result. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about whether your counties in Georgia have been able to recruit sufficient numbers of poll workers to staff their polling locations and make sure the election is running smoothly. And also, what are you doing to protect their safety and security during election hours, both early and on election day? And what are you telling them in order to encourage them to feel safe in that environment?
Well, as it relates to manpower, by and large, we're in good shape. We have a few new election directors. We work really strong on training. Our only concern when you have a new county election director, where they're running a smaller county with say 10,000 people, now they're in a county of 100,000. It's just a lot more complex. And so we work with those folks, but they're really have worked hard at getting their counties ready. Poll worker wise, we've been in good shape. Hurricane Helene, did damage some of the poll worker homes, and so the counties are making sure that they can have enough poll workers there. And I think we'll, at the end of the day, be in good shape for election day, coming up in November. So I
Are
think those are
you,
all important.
sorry,
Go ahead.
will there be law enforcement at polling locations? That's always viewed as a little bit of a double-edged sword because of the risk, the balance between security and voter intimidation. Is that an issue in Georgia?
We've had a lot of tabletops, security roundtables, regional tabletops, with law enforcement. So we've pulled in the county sheriff's departments, local police departments, if they're more of an urban, city type location. And then we've also brought in, CISA, DHS, GBI, FBI, and other organizations. And we did some actually role playing, game playing, just kind of scenario strategies. But also the poll workers, the poll managers, all will have a texting tool. It's a see something, say something, and we'll get notified of that along with the election director. And then we also have lanyards, with the panic button. So they'll have that, if the situation really looks like it's getting out of control, very dangerous. But by and large, many of the precincts will have a deputy sheriff's vehicle posted out there, just sitting out there, and they just sit there all day just to let everyone know that law enforcement's here, and just come in, enjoy the process, vote for the person of your choice, and smile and wait for the results to be posted on election night.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and I'm going to ask you to be as brief as you can, although it's a big question. You are a lifelong Republican, a self-described proud conservative. I believe you said publicly that you voted for Donald Trump in both 2016 and 2020. I wonder if you could reflect on where the Republican Party is today and what the state of your party is heading into the election. And if you want to tell us who you're voting for or whether you're voting, I'd be happy to hear it.
Well, I think that the Republican Party, at the end of the day, will find long-term benefit from really leaning into integrity, character, just being a good, honest, decent human being, and really, leaning into being a public servant, elected public servant. Got plenty of politicians. We need people to just do their job, and that's what I've been working on ever since I took office: is to do my job, to rebuild trust where it needs to be rebuilt, to increase the security where it needs to be increased. And I'll continue to do that. I think at the end of the day, that's what voters are looking for. Someone that is an honest person, working hard for them.
Thank you so much, Secretary Raffensperger. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you for joining us. We'll have to leave it there. And thanks to all of you for watching. If you are interested in watching more of these important conversations, please sign up for a Washington Post subscription. Get a free trial by visiting WashingtonPost.com/live. I'm Amy Gardner. Thanks again for joining us.